Welcome to What the F is Going On in Latin America and the Caribbean. This week on What the F is Going On, U.S. sanctions Colombia president for promoting regional sovereignty. This is a special edition broadcast from Mexico City featuring guest Dan Kovalik, who recently accepted the role as attorney for the Colombian president in the United States. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you for having me. I'm really glad to be here.
Oh, we're so pleased you had time to talk to us in this very, very important moment in the Caribbean and particularly for Colombia and Venezuela. So most of you viewing today's episode probably know Dan and have worked with him or at least know of him. But I want to give the audience a little detailed bio on Dan so you understand his background and why he was chosen for this role as Gustavo Petro's attorney, and why, in my opinion, he's the best person and only person to do it. So Dan is a human rights, labor rights attorney and political activist and author. He previously taught international human rights at the University of Pittsburgh School of Law. He graduated from Columbia Law School in 1993 and then served as in-house counsel for the United Steelworkers until 2019. While with the USW, he worked on, and this is important, he worked on Alien Tort Claims Act cases against the Coca-Cola Company, Drummond, and Occidental Petroleum, cases arising out of egregious human rights abuses in Colombia. And this was all pre-Petro's government. Dan accused the United States of intervention in Colombia, saying it has threatened peaceful actors there, so it may, quote, make Colombian land secure for massive appropriation and exploitation, unquote. Last week, he was appointed Gustavo Petro's lawyer in the United States, who was sanctioned by the U.S. over allegations of drug trafficking. And that happened Friday the 23rd.
Yes, exactly a week ago from when we're recording. Yeah.
Friday the 23rd. And so I just want to share, to open our conversation, Dan, I want to share a part of Gustavo Petro's X post from Thursday, October 30th, excuse me. And he said, quote, "The world knows that Trump is persecuting me because I oppose the genocide in Gaza and the crime in the Caribbean, and not because I was carrying cocaine or because I had a mafia niece and sister-in-law or uncle, or because I was Pablo Escobar's cartel with dad's friend in the Ochoa and things like that," quote unquote. So maybe that's the best place to start our conversation, that he has been accused of drug trafficking, and gosh, Colombia being accused of drug trafficking, that goes all the way back to the Clinton list in the 90s, doesn't it?
Yes. Well, of course, he's been put on what's known as the Clinton list.
And for the audience, what is the Clinton list?
Well, it's specifically the OFAC list, the Office of Foreign Asset Control. And if you're put on the list, you are basically blacklisted from a number of things: economically, from dealing with U.S. banks, U.S. companies, from traveling to the United States. But because the U.S. is so powerful economically and has its tentacles everywhere, it impacts even non-U.S. companies, that do business in the U.S., for example. And so it's going to make it very difficult for him to essentially have an economic life, to get money out of banks. His bank accounts in Colombia have been frozen, even though I think they're Colombian banks. But again, because they do business with American banks, they're afraid they will get sanctioned if they do business with Petro. So it has a cascading effect.
This is what those of us who work on sanctions call overcompliance.
Right.
By companies. Yeah.
Right.
They're afraid to get
and it could impact the economy of Colombia because, again, because Petro has so many relations, he's the president of the country.
Yeah.
And so there, companies may not want to do business with Colombia at all. And
So,
yeah, so
no,
anyway,
no,
this
go
is
ahead.
very serious. It's very serious, again, not just for him personally and his family, but also for Colombia. And it may be just the first shot across the bow. Other sanctions could very
Tougher
well
ones coming.
follow. Yeah, yeah,
So he has claimed he does not have any banking accounts in the United States.
correct.
So there's no threat there. And he had his visa revoked upon leaving the United Nations General Assembly in September, although he was
Right.
already on the plane, I believe. So he is one of the most powerful voices and of a president in Latin America, and one of the most important um, president of one of the most important countries allied with the United States in Latin America.
Yes, I mean, Colombia has been the most important ally to the United States in this hemisphere, and one of the top in the world for many decades. Um, Really, it was the really focal point of John F. Kennedy's so-called national security doctrine, which he began in 1962 in response to Vatican II and the rise of liberation theology, and it was really had nothing to do with national security and everything to do with destroying social movements in Latin America. But Colombia was the first place um, it began, and so this General William Yarborough is a little history. It's important history because a lot of people at this point don't know it or forgot it.
Mhm.
General Yarborough set forth what the national security doctrine was, how it was going to play out in Colombia, and specifically, he talked about the need to form these paramilitary groups that would be able to carry out, these weren't his words, but in essence, atrocities against trade union leaders, Catholic priests, indigenous leaders, other social movement leaders, uh, in a way that would give the government and the official military the U.S. was funding deniability. So
Mhm.
they could carry out these murders, and the government could say, well, that's these rogue paramilitaries, it's not us, when in fact, there's this always been a very close interlinkage between the Colombian military and the paramilitary death squads. And so, a lot of people talk about the Salvador option because most people know about the death squads in El Salvador.
Yeah.
And there was I believe, a general who talked about using the Salvador doctrine in Iraq, meaning using paramilitary
Yes.
death squads there, right? But really,
Yeah.
it goes back farther than that because when you're talking about the death squads in El Salvador, you're talking about the late 70s and 80s. But really, it's the Colombia option. Again, beginning
Mhm.
in 1962, which that was also used in Vietnam, where the U.S. also
Right.
used death squads as part of the Phoenix program. So Colombia has been kind of the laboratory for, the U.S. military intervention and, frankly, U.S. military crimes throughout the world going back a long time. And so in the early 2000s, beginning, I believe, in 1999, Congress passed, with Bill Clinton's enthusiastic support, what was known as here as Plan Colombia, but in Colombia they
Yeah.
called it Plan Washington.
Mm.
And it
Okay.
was a $10 billion military program, military support for the Colombians under the guise of fighting drugs, when in fact, again, it was really about fighting the social movements in
Yeah.
order to, especially unions, It became the most dangerous country in the world to be a unionist. 4,000 union leaders and members were killed between, I believe, 2000, something like 2000 and maybe 2020, something like that. A staggering figure. I mean, no country came close to that figure. And that's why, well, I got involved. I was at the Steelworkers Union at the time, and so I got the union to get involved because of those trade union killings.
Right.
And at the same time, I was advocating that Petro was a senator, and he was exposing what became to be known as the parapolitical scandal, the connection between politicians and the paramilitary. So, and we got to know each other back then because, our work kind of
Completely
overlapped.
intersected. Yeah.
Yes. So, and even at that time, various U.S. political and military leaders talked about Colombia and Plan Colombia is a vehicle for projecting U.S. power throughout the region. So Colombia was the epicenter, and has been for a long time, of U.S. military intervention in the region. The Colombian military trained a lot of other militaries.
Yeah.
By the way, Israel was very important in training the paramilitaries and supporting the paramilitaries. In fact, Carlos Castaño, who with his brother Fidel Castaño founded the AUC paramilitary death squads, he wrote a book about his life saying he owes his life and his country to Israel because of their support for the paramilitary death squads. And
they do all the training. I mean, that's a major export economic niche for the Israelis, this export of military training, especially throughout Latin America. Yeah.
Right. And Colombia, again, they played a similar role here. So when Petro was elected, I believe it was 2022.
Yeah.
It was like an earthquake. I mean, he took over from a sequence of administrations that were ultra right wing, that were killing thousands of people, that again were very closely aligned with the United States. Even they had Colombia, before Petro became president, joined NATO as a partner, not as a full member, but as a NATO partner. By the way, Petro announced very shortly before he was put on the OFAC list, he announced he was going to pull Colombia out of the NATO partnership. So, I mean,
I missed that.
Yeah.
That's huge. Well, that's reason alone to be sanctioned by the United States.
No, of course. He's been really, kind of coming into his own in a lot of ways. He got his start as a guerrilla, an M19 guerrilla. He's always been a radical guy, So when he became president, and his vice president was and is Francia Marquez, an Afro-Colombian leader. I mean, this was, it was huge. Now, Petro was, I think, smart in the sense that he, at least in his first couple years, he tried not to be like a Fidel or Chavez, in the sense that he kept his rhetoric down to a fairly low level, because he just wanted to do the work to help the poor, to fight drugs, through peaceful means like drug substitution programs. And then, I think what really, my own perception, what really kind of turned him more into kind of a Fidel or Chavez-like figure, was the genocide in Gaza. That he was so disgusted by what he was seeing there that he, as you said, he became one of the most important voices in the world against the genocide. And when he was in New York City a few weeks ago, and he spoke at the General Assembly, I mean, he gave a very impassioned speech against the genocide, and said that there would need to be a military force to intervene to protect the Palestinians in Gaza, which is true, which a lot of us believe and have been saying for a long time, but that a world leader said this at the UN was pretty radical. And again, I think that's what got him into trouble. Also, he did go out on the street and he spoke at a protest with Roger Waters, and he told U.S. soldiers they didn't have to obey unjust orders. That Trump definitely didn't like that.
Yeah, that was pretty. It was a great.
That was,
I mean, it was a great moment. It just showed him as such an activist.
Yeah,
political,
yeah.
leader.
And I think he was wearing a keffiyeh at the time, which he does a lot now. I mean, so he changed his, not his views, but he changed his style and became more vocal. And
I think
also,
he's more himself.
That's what I mean. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think we're seeing
himself.
The real man, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, well, and also it's at a time, he's got less than a year left in his term. He can't run for a second consecutive term under the Constitution.
Okay, I wanted to ask about that. So the Colombian Constitution allows for 1 4-year term.
Right, and you could sit out the next term and run again, but you can't have two consecutive terms. Okay. And the guy who's been elected by
that explains the Uribe Duque thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
And his successor, his party, last Sunday voted for his successor, and that is going to be Ivan Cepeda, who's a member of the Communist Party of Colombia and is even more radical than Petro, who does stand in front of posters of Che Guevara and give speeches and all. So I think the sanctions are also timed to try to derail his candidacy, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So, that's, so all these, we've seen this show before, right? I mean, I think, I think really the U.S., I think, while the U.S. is pretty open, not pretty, it is very open now about its desire to overthrow Maduro, I think you could easily hear more direct statements about wanting to overthrow Petro. I think he's become, if not enemy number one, enemy number two in the region.
Yeah, no, it's very obvious they want, to me at least, that they want regime change in Colombia as well. And I agree, it may very well have to do with preventing Cepeda from succeeding Petro. But Gustavo Petro has been very clear that if there is a U.S. invasion of Venezuela, that Colombia will support Venezuela.
Yes.
And I mean, those are fighting words, which he knows how to do.
Yeah.
So literally and figuratively does know how to do.
And this is a bit of a sea change for him again, because he's been critical of Maduro. He did not recognize Maduro's victory in the last election. But, this doesn't have anything to do with that. I mean, he supports sovereignty of nations and he opposes U.S. intervention. So he's made it clear he's not going to, allow for an intervention in his neighboring country without some resistance. And the other thing he's, again, reviled by, and I mean, I'm really amazed at how few people in the U.S. seem to be reviled by this. And this is just the naked murder of people in these boats in the Caribbean and now in the Pacific. I mean, they're just incinerating people. They say they're drug traffickers, but I believe even I saw a thing today that Hegseth admitted they don't know who these people are. I mean, they're just killing random people. And there's very little outcry. The U.S. press doesn't seem bothered by it. I mean, it's a really stunning thing. But this has obviously upset Petro as well. And by the way, he's mentioned that some of the people killed were Colombian.
Yeah.
So, and some from
Yeah.
Trinidad, Tobago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is just who, by the way, the U.S. doesn't claim Trinidad Tobago's doing anything wrong. So, anyway, I think events pushed Petro, as you said, to become who he is and to push him into a
But
more
more
vocal
overtly who
position.
he is, Yeah.
Yeah. And, he's paying a price.
Yeah.
And I think, we don't know what depths he will have to pay. I mean, we don't know what else is coming. Um, it's very worrisome. And it just shows, I mean, how vindictive the U.S. is, and Trump in particular. I mean, Trump is obviously a very vindictive human being.
Well,
Um,
the mask's off. The mask, I would argue the mask has been off. It's like kind of
yeah,
like the Wizard of Oz. You pull back the curtain and see what really it's been off for quite some time, and not just with this Trump 2 administration, but it really is very raw and
yeah,
in
it's a little more naked than before. Although, I do remind people when you talk about these, again, murders in the Caribbean and the Pacific. I mean, I'd like to remind people that Obama he preferred to bomb wedding parties. That was
true
that in
drone
Yemen.
strikes.
That was more his game. Again, no one seemed to care about that either. I mean, that's the thing. Like our country's become so inert
Yeah.
to this
Yeah.
violence. I mean, just ultra violence. To quote uh, Clockwork Orange, this is a little of the ultra violence, and it's just we've gotten so used to it that there's very little outcry, and that's very troubling. You know.
Well, there's outcry from the spaces you and I work in, and I think it's pretty strong. The thing that that could happen with these strikes, at least in the space where we work, is these sanctions placed on countries like Cuba and Venezuela in this hemisphere, and across, there's many more countries across the world that are preventing, medicines and food and forcing migration and and deaths. And was it in the CEPA report published in Lancet where 500,000 um, unnecessary deaths, which is as much, if not more, than a hot war. And one of the things that striking these boats in the Caribbean is showing people death, like, on social media. Whereas the sanctions are it's been hard to sell sanctions as warfare. And you and I both strongly agree that they are, and work to get them lifted in multiple countries. But sanctions are very silent. They're out of sight, out of mind for a lot
Yeah,
of US citizens,
it's
right?
people dying of starvation or people dying because they can't get a medicine they need or they
Right.
can't, and that's
But
as
these,
yeah. But yeah, just blowing up, incinerating people
yeah, yeah.
again on
You can't
videotape.
hide that.
Yeah, well, and they don't want to. That's the other thing. Like they want to show they are terrorizing the Caribbean and the Pacific right now, just as they're terrorizing the American people. In fact, did you see this crazy thing from yesterday? I forget who suggested this. I think it was a congressperson, but anyway, said, "Hey, ICE, could you cool it for the Halloween weekend so the kids, aren't terrorized over the weekend?" And
Oh,
by the way, who was it? The head of Homeland Security. I'm forgetting her name. Anyway,
no, Christine, no.
it was Christine Nome said, no, we're going to still go ahead over the weekend. But the fact that he said this
Yeah,
guy, so they're not terrorized over the weekend. So I guess you're admitting that every other day we are being terrorized,
we
right?
are
I
doing
mean,
right.
so that is the name of the game. Like this is brutality for its own sake. to put people into fear. This is true terrorism. I mean, for the U.S., which always is complaining about the threat of terrorism, we are the terror, or our government is the terror, and this is going to provoke some sort of resistance and response. I mean, people are not going to just keep taking this, and they shouldn't, and we as Americans shouldn't. This is just unacceptable.
So how well, let me ask, that should be my second question after. Can you tell us, I mean, as much as you're freely available to, how you're going to build Gustavo Petro's case in the United States? What does that look like? How do you represent him in the U.S. and
Well,
what
there's
are
a couple of different ways to go, but I mean, I think the way that I'm thinking, and I've been consulting some other lawyers on this, is that you can file a lawsuit to challenge the OFAC designation, and you can raise constitutional issues like due process, First Amendment. I mean, he was speaking in New York City at the time.
Yeah.
He may have provoked this, and he would have a First Amendment right to have said what he said inside the United Nations at East 59th Street in New York City, So I think that is probably a good way to go after it. There's more of an administrative way to do it, but takes a long time and is probably not worth it. But yeah, I mean, I think we're going to essentially raise the defense that Petro's raising publicly, and that this is retaliation for, his public positions on things. And by the way, a lot of people don't realize the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution protects non-citizens as well.
Mhm.
And he was here on a visa at the time he made those statements. So anyway, yeah, so I feel pretty good about that. I mean, it's not going to be easy, but I feel it's a good case anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's very important.
Yes, I think so. I think it's very important. And yeah, I mean, what can I say? I think Petro is someone that needs to be defended, So he needs as many friends as he can get
Yeah.
right
Well, I
now.
think he has a lot of friends.
Well, he does.
Probably even more now.
Well, in fact, he tweeted out that his memoir was translated into Farsi, and 1 million copies have been printed up in Iran.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
no, he's a
Well,
very
he's such a
popular guy.
voice of consciousness for the world and really for the hemisphere. And I think you and I would both agree that's the real reason he's been sanctioned.
Yeah,
His voice
exactly. It's
to
because he's
shut down
effective. Yeah, he's effective at what he's doing, and he is challenging the empire
yeah.
at a time it really needs to be challenged. So
He's challenging both the US part of the empire and the Israeli part of the empire,
yeah,
both simultaneously. Yeah.
and he
Yeah.
can, he barely made it back to the U.S. because this company in Spain wouldn't refuel his airplane. Now, to its credit, the Spanish government did wheel him into a military hangar, and they refueled him.
Let's talk about that for a moment, just for more clarity for the audience, because he was on his presidential plane to Saudi Arabia. This was earlier this week.
No, home from
Oh, he was coming home. Okay.
the
He
Middle
was
East. Yeah.
returning from Saudi Arabia. Okay. And stopped for a refueling.
Right, in Spain, which
And
was planned. He had planned to do. Yeah.
and the fuel, the aviation fuel was supposed to be provided by a US company. The US company refused to refuel the plane. That is what we call overcompliance with sanctions.
Right.
So it's a US company who doesn't want to get involved with a government and person who's been sanctioned. And so it was the Spanish government intervened and had him refuel at a military base, I believe.
Right. That's
Yeah.
right.
So
So these, he's going to experience more of this sort of thing again, because the U.S. and its companies and its banks are everywhere.
yeah,
It's hard to function in this world outside of the U.S. financial system. Countries like Iran and Russia have had to find a way to do that, but it's very difficult. So,
yeah. Venezuela, Cuba,
yeah.
North Korea. I mean, the list is lengthy.
Well, it is growing. They say about a third of the world's population are under U.S. sanctions right now, which is pretty. And by the way, it is backfiring. I mean, the dollar will not be the reserve currency anymore because people can't afford to have it as such, right? They can't afford to be able to be crushed by the U.S. because of its power, the power of the U.S. dollar. And I welcome the day it's not the reserve currency, because the only way the U.S. can keep the war machine going is by printing money. It's the only country in the world that can really do that.
Yeah.
Because of the power of the U.S. dollar. So, well, with that said, Terry, I need to move on.
Okay.
My life is kind of crazy right now, as you can imagine.
No doubt, but it's crazy with a fantastic project. So we're so happy you made time for us today, and I'm so really very proud to call you my friend, and very proud of the work you're doing. It's just enormously important. So
thank you, Terry. I do appreciate that. I appreciate what you're doing too, and I look forward to the next time.
okay, thank you, Dan. Thank you so much for joining us. Okay.
Absolutely. Be well.
All righty.
Okay. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So for the audience, if you'll just stay for a moment longer, you can take off. Then I just want to ask the audience.
Okay.
You can, if you need to, please, please feel free to.
See you, Terry.
This is just a 2-minute drill for the audience.
Okay. Take care.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Sure thing.
Really, you had time for us.
Thank you. Absolutely. Bye-bye.
So for the audience, before I sign off, I want to give you an action that you can do if you've been so motivated by Dan's conversation today. We're going to ask you from Code Pink to sign the petition urging Admiral Alvin Halsey to make a statement about U.S. intervention in the Caribbean. And let me just read to you what that petition is about. The United States is once again edging toward war in Latin America, and Admiral Alvin Halsey, may be one of the few people who can stop it. As the head of the U.S. Southern Command, he has witnessed firsthand the growing militarization of the Caribbean. Troops sent to Puerto Rico, warships off Venezuela's coast, CIA authorizations for land strikes. Now that reports say he's stepping down, this is the moment to call on him to speak out. And so Code Pink has created a petition urging him to speak out, and you can find that petition at codepink.org/Halsey, Halsey, Holsey. So if you're looking for something to do today, please sign that petition. And so glad that you had time to join us, and we look forward to talking with you again. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. And again, a huge shout out to our special guest, Dan Kowalik.